Today is May the 6th. In the last episode, I talked a little bit about, first of all, for those of you that are listening for the first time, I'm an entrepreneur, live in Canada, thinking of trying to get to the US to open up a business, sort of working through all the math and the decision process and sharing my thoughts because I think there are other entrepreneurs in Canada or elsewhere that maybe are in the same position. They're thinking of uh, leaving where they are to go somewhere else. In my last episode, I talked about the fact that I was going to do some work to see if the cost of living was something that I was attracted to, and maybe that's why I'm looking to leave. And so I did a little bit of work, thanks to my pal, ChatGPT, and I just did a comparison between Austin, Texas, and Calgary. And what I could see as I went through the math was that rent in both cities is pretty close. It looks like it's maybe a touch more expensive to live in Austin. That utilities, however, here in Calgary, Canada, are much more expensive. That transportation, in terms of whether you're looking for like a bus pass or gasoline or whatever, is more expensive here in Canada. Groceries are more expensive here in Canada, and wages are a little bit lower. So then I was like, okay, well, because I don't know that Austin is actually where I want to end up, maybe Nashville. Let me take a look at Nashville. And the reason I picked out Nashville is because my son has been there since the beginning of the year. And I've been there a handful of times, and it's pretty comparable to Calgary, I think, in terms of overall maybe political thinking or cultural stuff. There's cowboys here, there's cowboys there, country music, etc. And so I did a comparison there, and then same sort of thing. It turns out that Calgary's a little bit more expensive than Nashville. That utilities are way more expensive in Calgary. That transportation, again, more expensive in Calgary, and groceries generally are more expensive in Calgary. And the average wage is roughly the same. So all of that leads me to believe that the math isn't why I'm leaving. And I know I've talked about that on a previous episode when I did the tax comparison and saw that between running a business in US dollars in the US versus running a business in Canada in Canadian dollars is roughly the same. So it wasn't a tax thing. Now the cost of living seems to be less expensive in the US than it is in Canada. This is one of my primary motivators for wanting to leave because I think that Canada is going to continue to get more expensive. Not like overnight, but I do think over time, Canada is going to become a much more expensive place to live. And my family might be okay. Like Lisa and I might be okay, but I don't know about our kids. I know I have in our construction company here in Calgary, we have a lot of people that work for us, and I can't see them owning a home ever. Maybe a condo, but you can't really raise a family inside of a condo in a city like Calgary. So it's kind of that line of thinking that has me looking south of the border to say, is there an opportunity to start a life in the US to some degree in hopes that maybe there's an opportunity for our kids, that maybe there's a better use of capital that Lisa and I might have access to. And so if we can run our business really well in Canada and provide meaningful work for the folks that are here, that maybe we can go and do the same thing in the US and then just split our time. So in this episode, hopefully what I can walk away with as I think through this is the cost of living isn't going to be more in the US, it's going to be less in the US. And so I think that's kind of a check mark in the box of this should probably happen. And then I didn't record anything yesterday, but there was a public announcement from our premier of our province, be like, I guess, the governor of a state in the US. And she went on to say that while we're, as a province, we're looking forward to working with the prime minister, and she said all of the right things that supposed to make you feel warm and fuzzy. She did say that she's going to be drawing a hard line and trying to figure out how to make sure Alberta doesn't get taken advantage of, that we are able to take the resources that we have here in the province and do something more with them than just watching them erode away from sort of government policy decisions like the carbon tax is, of course, a big one. The second one is that the federal government isn't in support of trying to help get our oil products to anyone other than maybe the Americans, which is dumb. I think, because Eastern Canada certainly could benefit from the product that we have here in our province. So you just can kind of feel that things are going to get hard and tough. And I don't think that means anything on the ground. I think people still live, still pay their bills, still make some money. It just means it just is harder. It goes back to what I said in my first bunch of episodes where like where's the motivation? Where's the motivation to want to aspire to do something really great in this country? Where is the motivation for people like myself to say that it's worth it to put more capital at risk, to um, try and take bigger risks with business ventures when you're exposing your assets and your livelihood to something that ultimately might just get shut down by the government. If you're familiar with the history of our province, the federal government pretty much shut down our province in the early 80s with the National Energy Program, and that led to several years of really difficult living. My family, my dad um, owned a home during that period of time. Pretty simple guy, but you could tell in talking to him that that was a really rough time for him. And same thing, like he didn't really see the need to work more than what was required by his family, and I'm just not sure that's a great posture. So those sorts of things, the announcement from the premier, kind of the way the federal government looks at our province. I can't practically just uproot and leave. There are things like visas, there are lots of requirements, there's lots of hurdles to jump, but I also don't see things getting better. And so if I have a little bit of time to spend on something, putting together an E2 visa, putting together some money, putting together a business plan, and say a year from now, next spring, be in a position to say, we were, as a family, able to successfully go south of the border with a business. We can't work in the US under the E2 visa. You can kind of only own it, maybe provide some direction, but it has to employ Americans. And so you have to have the money to support that in a viable business. And so I'm going to keep, as I get down that path, when I start preparing my business plan, I'll share what I'm learning about that. But that's what it looks like today. It looks like it's not a tax exercise. It's not necessarily a cost of living exercise, although you might be able to live a little cheaper in the US on a relative basis. But it has more to do with at 47 years old, is Canada really the best place where I want to hang out and continue to invest my time, energy, and resources? And right now, the answer feels like no. I will do the best I can with what I have, because I know that what I have is great and has provided for our family and many, many other families. But the aspiration to do something even more isn't there, because I can't see that it would ever be worth it in Canada. I just see that the friction, like once you get past providing for your own needs, there's no real reason to do more than that in Canada. And that was exactly what I experienced in Spain. I just saw in the places that we visited and hung out in, people worked to live, they didn't live to work. And that's great. That is a philosophy. I believe a little differently than that. I think that if you've been blessed with a lot, that you have a responsibility to do a lot with that. And I'm just not sure that I want to do a tremendous more than that here in Canada. I'd rather take a shot at trying to do it in the US and see if that American dream um, is real and is legit. So on today, Tuesday, May the 6th, if you had to ask, am I going to stay in Canada or am I going to go and try to set up a life down there for 6 months out of the year? The answer today is I'm going to go.